Hi, I'm Alan Ross. I'm the managing editor of APC Media and APC Technologies. We are at the Seagray 2023 Grid of the Future Symposium. And these interviews are with the leaders at Seagray and the leaders of the industry. Hope you enjoy. My next guest is Stewart Ramsay. Stewart is are you the managing editor or managing director, or what is your executive director at Vanry Associates?
Managing executive. So it's a nice way of saying CEO.
Okay.
But our founder, who passed away in 2014, is on the books, is still the CEO.
Okay.
I have respect for him.
So you have the responsibility of the CEO, but they call you out of the managing editor and CEO. I just call myself managing editor. The CEO sounds too.
Yeah, I've been CEOs before. I didn't need it again.
You've done a lot in this, startup space, leadership space, a lot in business as a whole. Talk about how you got into the power industry part of it.
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. I got to think back. It's a long time ago. I went to. I think in high school I was told I wasn't smart enough to be an engineer. My guidance counselor, and I hated that for years. Yeah. And then I think I realized later in life that he knew what that was going to do for me. He did that to kick me in the pants. And so I think I went to engineering school just to spite him.
I got to tell you, similar thing. Guy told me I couldn't get into Georgia Tech from Atlanta, and I said, watch.
Yeah.
Just go through it, then you don't get out of it.
Yeah, so I these days I thank Colonel Staley for the kick in the pants that was. Yeah. So we went to Northeastern University, and I went into the power program. I liked the notion of electricity. I'd always been interested in it, and Northeastern had a great co-op program, so you got a chance to work. Do real life work in your field. I went to work for Digital Equipment Corporation for some of my co-op and realized that designing electric systems for building wasn't where I really wanted to be. So I changed out, went to work for a company called R.W. Beck during one of my last co-ops, and was fascinated by substations, transmission lines, and all that sort of thing. And I was hooked. And so I spent the first big part of my career being a nuts and bolts engineer, doing planning studies, design, construction management for all those kinds of facilities. And it took me lots of different places. I had clients down in the Caribbean, and I was like, okay, well, I think I was in the Cayman Islands, my 7th trip before I ever set foot on the beach. It was a great utility, but boy, they knew how to get value for their dollar. So we did a lot of work. So it's that's kind of how I got into it. And I've always had an interest in electricity and energy.
And that was when things were more stable than they are today. We'll talk about that in a minute. Tell me what Vanry does. Vanry and Associates.
Yeah, so Vanry and Associates, we're a management consulting firm. That's kind of the category we fit into. And we focus primarily on leadership. Okay. And we operate from a philosophy that all work gets done in the context of relationships.
Right.
The more productive the relationship, the easier it is to get the work done.
Yeah.
The more difficult the relationship, the more sand in the gears, the harder to get things done. And so I'm a little bit of an odd duck in that space, being an engineer. Engineering schools, we don't have leadership courses. We don't have courses on how to listen to other people and all that sort of thing. And so I got pulled into it earlier in my career, and found it to be a new set of problems to solve. And I think engineers, for the most part, most of us we're problem solvers.
We're problem solvers. Marinas run to trouble. We run to problem.
We do. I tell people who aren't engineers, I say, we have a weakness. It's like catnip. You look at most engineers, you look them in the eye and say, I need help. It's like, oh my gosh. They can't help themselves, right?
It's like drugs to us.
It is. Well, and it's one of the things I love about our industry. We're it's full of people who, we don't get into engineering to get rich, right? Nobody does that. I think the people that get into engineering are there because they like solving problems. They like making things better, for other people.
So that's a great outlook on it. You're exactly right. And they need to be taught too other things. I think interesting because you talk about leadership development and organizational development. And this comes from an engineer. So I have an engineering background, George, mechanical engineering. So I have found that the disciplines I learned as an engineer, because it's a discipline, right?
Yeah.
The disciplines I learned later in my career became valuable when I became a leader.
Yeah.
Suddenly the disciplines and the leadership. So I think engineers make great to get your undergraduate, make a great law degree. They make great doctors.
Yeah.
They make great leaders, but they have to be taught. And
Sure.
yeah.
It's just a different set of problems that we're solving. And so once you show them the tools that they can use, I led a tutorial for the Next Generation Network yesterday. It's with a couple colleagues, and it was fascinating. And one of the people in the tutorial asked me, said, when you look at what groups make good leaders, if you had to pick a discipline for good leaders, would you pick engineer? I said, well, or would you pick, marketing or business or something? And I said, in my career, I've come across a few engineers who couldn't be taught anything, right? They knew everything. So, if you set those people aside, I'd go with engineers all the time.
Yeah.
An engineer is going to work because at their heart, they want to solve problems. And so when you show them how to solve process problems or techniques on, better techniques for listening and getting things done with groups of people, engineers like wonderful leaders.
Well, another one too is engineers there's a certain, I would use the term humility, but they also make great collaborators. They like to collaborate on solving a problem. It's not like, oh, I got it, let me do it my own. And oh, look at me, I solved the problem. But they really do a look at we solved the problem. There's a great team aspect to what is there. They naturally work well in groups.
I agree. And I think that there's also an element of compassion in most good engineers, right? It's about solving problems. Some of us like to solve problems for the sake of solving the problem. But I think most engineers want to solve the problems to make things better for other people.
I would agree.
And I think that, as soon as you tap into that on the leadership side, oh my goodness, the engineers make great leaders because they got that. Most of them have that compassion sort of wired into them.
So you're a different interview because normally at this point I switch and I say, okay, given your vast time in transmission and distribution engineering with Dominion Energy, right? Let's talk about a problem. Well, I'm going to do that, but I'm going to give you a much wider burst.
Sure.
We have had more change in the last decade in this industry, the power industry, than we've had in the 100 years previous.
I think.
Okay. And whether it's 15 years or almost the most amount of change.
Sure.
2003 was the seminal mark where the power went out in the Northeast. We all went, whoops, we need to do something. And now it's, we've got a grid that they're trying to harden. They're trying to make flexible. They're going to go into a step down grid to a step everywhere grid. You've got inverter-based systems creating harmonics and transients, adding problems to the grid. You just have a lot more problems. And we like to solve them. But from your perspective, and as you've seen this industry, what are the biggest problems you think we face with as engineers to deal with from a utilities perspective?
I think the biggest problem we deal with is the people that are pulling us and pushing us in different directions don't really understand the totality of the issue. And so, I've seen this from my utility days. I also see it in my consulting role. people get very focused on, their thing, whether it's, this kind of renewable energy or storage, and they don't step back and look at the totality of it. One of the utilities I work with in Texas, for their service territory, a new electric car is 2 houses. It's the same impact on their system. There's 2 houses for every electric car. And so if we put every one of their customers starts driving them, they've got to rebuild their system twice. And, the cost impact of that is significant.
Yeah.
And so now you start to look at it and go, so how do we offset that? Well, we could do that with storage in the home. How are we going to build all these batteries? Where are we going to find the raw materials, right? I mean, I've seen one of the fellows from 1898, one of the Burns and Mac companies, did some quick analysis and said, we need 50 new cobalt mines, the amount of new mines that we'd need to create to get all these materials, let alone a manufacturing capability. And so I think as a society, we've stopped looking at it holistically.
Yeah.
And I think one of the biggest problems we have as an industry is not having the fulsome conversation about, okay, so how do we really want to do this? I get it that, you want to move to all EVs by this, but let's look at the practicality of it. What are the implications for that? What else are we going to need? What's that going to do to customer rates? We need to expand the conversation, because I think if we don't, then our customers in the end are going to be surprised at the cost impact I'm already starting to see a lot of stakeholders, raising significant concerns about environmental impacts of mining. When you look at, some of the cobalt comes from mines in Congo, where they don't have the same environmental regulations that we do. And they have 12-year-old kids, knee deep in water. And so you start to look at, what's it going to take to do all this? And is there a better path? I don't have the answer to it, but I think that's a question we as an industry should answer. I see the goal. Now what would be a good path? And, you as a stakeholder, you as a regulator, you as a policymaker may be disappointed because the path is different or more circuitous than the straight line that you would like.
No.
But in the end, is it better for society? So what I think we have to turn the conversation to, more holistic. And part of the problem is historically, when I was at AEP and PG&E, I just spent a lot of time with my engineers saying, look, we can't tell them that it can't be done. Because we say it can't be done, it can't be done, it can't be done. And then we work our tails off and we do it anyway, right? The sky is falling and we're shoring up. So it's like, no, so be realistic about it. If it can't be done, then, explain the reasons why. And if it can be done with Herculean effort, say that and show people what the Herculean effort is. Let's have an honest, no joke conversation about what it's going to take. And I think as a society, we need to look at these things more holistically. And, so coming back to Vanry, so I think we don't have those conversations because there's a general lack of trust among all the players. The regulators don't necessarily trust the utilities. Stakeholders, certainly, in my experience, a lot of the stakeholders don't trust the utilities. The utilities don't trust all the stakeholders. Like, okay, well, that's not a good environment to work in. So let's go build some trust. We can learn to trust each other and still be in disagreement, be in strong disagreement. I don't agree with your policy. And I trust that you're being truthful and you're sharing everything with me. And we can still disagree, but it's a different conversation. Now we can work on a different kind of solution.
How do you take what you do, which would really be considered as soft skills, and turn them into hard skills, because they're not soft skills. I mean, if you go to a weekend retreat on how to, treat your spouse better, okay, that's a good soft skill. But these are the things you're talking about are hard skills. That collaboration is not a hard thing. It's a superb tool, but it's not an easy thing. It's a hard thing to do. But how do you do it?
It's new habit. We have to develop new habits. So I love your right. Go off to a weekend retreat. The example I use is the golf video. I've watched the golf video a lot. Hasn't done anything for my swim because I'm not practicing, right? And I don't have somebody looking at my swing and telling me, no, you need to move your grip. And so we need to understand, what are these new tools, right? So our ability to listen. So what are some of the tools about listening, differently? Or what are some of the tools about building trust? I think I'm a really good driver in the US. When I go to the UK, I'm a so-so driver. I'm looking in the wrong place.
Rolling the wheel or two.
We're looking in the wrong place for the rear view mirror, right? And so after a couple of weeks, I'm a better driver, but I'm still looking in the wrong direction, right? And so spend a lot of time in the UK, I get to be a much better driver. Now I'm not as good a driver back in the, right? And so it's about building new habits, so that you do things like listening, or you start to engage in ways of building trust without actually having to think about it, right? And so we call it embodied skills. So there's a full set of skills that if we embody them, we become far more effective collaborators, far more effective leaders. And in our world, I mean, what gives my people juice is reducing waste. I mean, the folks at Vanry are all about, let's reduce waste in human interactions, right? And so
Wasted energy,
wasted time, wasted energy, wasted people's souls, right? I mean, think about it. You go to a job that you hate for years. That's soul sucking. Talking about waste. So we're really focused on how do we take as much waste as possible out of the work we do together, the collaboration, the way we work together.
I love that. Now I know what Vanry does a little bit better. That's waste out of human relationships planning.
It is really neat. It is really neat. So we do a lot of work facilitating like integrated resource planning stakeholder meeting. Right. And so a lot of what we'll do is work with the utility on, we'll review their materials and say, I know that you want to convey this message, but the way you said it here is, I don't think you're saying something that's you don't intend to, or you're not accurately conveying, or you're hiding the strength under a bushel basket. What do you? And so a lot of it is helping them see how other people are going to listen to it and interpret it. And we're not trying to just sugarcoat anything or change the message. We're trying to say, no, be clear about your message. If it's bad news, be clear about it. If it's good news, be clear about it. But just be clear about it. Don't make people guess, and don't be surprised. And guess what? The other people have a right to have their view. So don't get cranky about them when they don't agree with you. It's okay. They don't agree with you. Let's have a conversation about why, and find a middle ground if there is one. And if there isn't, I'm going to have a conversation about there isn't a middle ground.
I have a new tagline for Vanry.
What's that?
That is, we eliminate waste and we translate common values.
There you go. I like that. Use that. I would say we teach people how to eliminate waste, right? Because it's not about me coming in and eliminating waste for you. It's showing you how to eliminate.
Right now, it's your tagline. You
right.
just made
yeah, no.
Last question I have for you: C grade.
Yep.
What value do you see with C grade to the company and to you personally?
So that's a wonderful question. So I love C grade. So I'm a member of IEEE. I'm a member of C grade. Yeah, and I like both organizations. I love Seagray because Seagray is so focused on learning and helping people solve problems in a pragmatic way. You look at the technical brochures, they are a gold mine, any topic, pick any one of them. And it's a gold mine of collective intelligence about, well, we have this problem with gassing in a bulk oil breaker. Read the technical bulletin, and it's got the insights from around the world on here are the different things you can do about it. And so it's a really, for me, it's an accelerator in people's learning. The other thing I love about it, and this, by the way, this Grid of the Future is my favorite industry conference. When I go to a lot of industry conferences, this one is my favorite because at the USMC, the senior executives, there's so many senior executives come to the Grid of the Future, and they spend so much of their time at the conference talking to younger people and networking with the younger people in the industry. And, when in my career did I get to talk to, 2 or 3 CEOs of different companies on a peer-to-peer basis?
Yeah.
Never really happened. And so the exposure, the people that make up the national committee for the U.S. Seagray are so heavily vested in growth and learning for women and young people. Well, that's one of the reasons I love it.
It's a passion of ours at APC Media is women in power systems. And we support the Next Generation Network that's here, which I've met a lot of the people. The chairman of that is going to be profiled, but it's the idea of bringing generations together there. But thank you so much, Stewart. It's been a pleasure.
Likewise. Thank you very much.